Hey, Frog fans, welcome into another episode of Frogs Insider presented by the Flying T Club. I'm your host, Jamie Plunkett. Melissa Treebosser not with us today. She'll be back along later this week as we continue to test out our new daily, semi-daily show format, trying to get a couple more shows out each week than we typically do. Just trying out this new format over the last couple of weeks. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope you've noticed that it's happening. If you've enjoyed it, let us know. Either tweet at us, leave a comment on the podcast, leave a comment on the YouTube channel, wherever you consume the content. Just let us know how you feel about kind of breaking up the show into a couple smaller shows throughout the week. Lets us focus, I think, a little bit more on specific subjects for longer than, trying to jam 3 or 4 subjects into an hour-long show each week. So we've enjoyed trying to test out this format of not every show is going to have both of us on it. Melissa's got a couple things in the hopper for this week or next week as well. And then, of course, we're going to continue to do shows together on top of all of that. So let us know if you enjoy this new format. Again, we're just testing it out, trying to see what that feels like, what that rhythm feels like, and whether or not this is something we want to keep doing. So your feedback is super important as we continue to figure this out. The numbers on the YouTube channel and the numbers on the podcast streaming side of things seem to say that you guys appreciate it. So keep listening, keep liking, keep doing what you're doing, and let us know if this is a format that you really enjoy. We're going to talk tonight about a couple of different things. First, we're going to talk about TCU Beach Volleyball winning a national championship. Absolutely huge for the program. Love to see it for the women in that program and for Hector Gutierrez, who's been heading up that program since its inception way back in the day. And we're going to talk a little bit about TCU baseball, heading over to Tucson and dropping 2 out of 3 to Arizona. What does that mean for TCU baseball's hosting chances? What does that mean for TCU baseball as far as seeding goes in the Big 12 tournament? We'll talk about all of that later in the show as well. But first, quick word about the Flying T Club, our presenting sponsor. The Flying T Club is TCU's NIL collective. You can learn about that collective and what they do with TCU student athletes, and you can contribute to the Flying T Club by going to flyingtclub.com. We're going to talk a lot more about them later in the show, but keep the Flying T Club front of mind if you've got a little extra money floating around in your pocket. They are doing great work for TCU and for TCU's student athletes. We're also a part of the Dave Campbell's Texas Football Network. You can find that podcast feed, which is our show and a show for every D1 football program in the state of Texas. Wherever you get your podcasts, just search Republic of Football Network and it will pop up. And if you just want our feed, you probably already know about it, but if you don't, just search Frogs Insider wherever you get your podcasts and our feed will pop up with all of our shows. And we have extra content on there, especially doing this new format that isn't making it over into the Dave Campbell's feed. And as always, go over to the YouTube channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment on the videos. We just crossed 2,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Super proud of that accomplishment and very, very grateful to all of you for going over and subscribing to the YouTube channel. So let's jump in. TCU Beach Volleyball wins their first ever national championship. Absolutely huge. They take down Loyola Marymount LMU on Sunday morning in Gulf Shores to win the title. They win it 3-2. The way that beach volleyball works, if you don't know, they play 5 pairings across 5 different courts, all happening simultaneously, similar to tennis and how it's set up. And you play a match on each court. It's 3 sets. First to win 2 sets wins the match and earns their team a point. So TCU won 3 of the 5 courts on Sunday morning over LMU. The way it broke out, though, was just absolutely incredible. You couldn't have scripted it any better. So TCU wins on courts 3 and 4. LMU wins on courts 2 and 5. They're all 4 of those pairings won in straight sets. They won set 1 and set 2, got their point, and moved on. The only court to go to a third set was court 1, where the best of the best were playing for both teams. For TCU, it was Daniela Alvarez and Tanya Moreno. Daniela Alvarez, obviously the AVCA National Player of the Year. She's the number one ranked volleyball player, beach volleyball player in the country this year. Tanya Moreno, her partner, ranked 22nd. And this is a team, this is a duo that has been stellar for TCU for years and years and years now. And you'll probably recall they also represented Spain in the Summer Olympics in Paris last summer in 2024 as well. So this is an old veteran duo that has done a tremendous amount of good for TCU Beach Volleyball, and they finally get over the hump and get their national championship. It was not easy because they fell in the first set. They lost the first set 21-14, I believe, and then had to come storming back. Daniela Alvarez, I mean, my goodness, what can you say about her? She absolutely dominated the second set and then turned it on even more in the third set. So the first two sets of each match are to 21. The third is to 15. You switch sides every 5 points in the third set. TCU jumped out to a 3-0 lead in the third set, forcing LMU to call a timeout. But from there, Daniela just dominated. She was at the net. She had incredible blocks. She had a couple really good third hits. And then Tanya Marino was just diving all over the place, absolutely crushing it. They are an incredible pairing, and they showed all of the good of what they were capable of doing as they earned TCU a national championship. Really, really cool that it came down to them. Really, really cool that they were the ones that got TCU over the hump for the first time. Couldn't think of a more deserving duo to be the ones in that position than Daniela and Tanya. So super proud of them. Very, very cool. But also got to note the winners on courts 3 and 4 as well for TCU. On court 3, there was true freshmen out there, right? Sophia, I'm not here to have Melissa bounce this name off of me. Azazquizala. Sophia Azazquizala, a true freshman, big, tall, also from Spain, saw Tanya and Daniela come over here, saw the success they had, and kind of followed in their footsteps as a true freshman, as up at the net style player, a big, tall blocker. She was incredible. She was all over the place at the net, blocked a ton of shots, had some really nice shots down the line as well, and was just giving LMU fits. And then her senior partner, Alanis Navas, they as a duo actually won the most matches for TCU this season. They went 26-2. Really cool that they earned a point for the Frogs on Sunday morning as well. And then on court 4, Annalena Camille and Ana Vergara finished an undefeated season. They were 21-0 as a duo this year to get TCU their actually first point of the match, I believe, was Camille and Vergara. They broke the seal for TCU. And then Daniela and Tanya, the veterans, the Olympians, brought it home for the Horned Frogs. Just incredible stuff. This was a big moment for a couple of reasons. Not only was it TCU's first beach volleyball national championship, but the NCAA just took over the beach volleyball national championship in 2016. It had been run by the AVCA prior to that. And now that the NCAA has been putting on this tournament since 2016, only 2 schools had ever won a national championship. That's USC and UCLA. Makes a lot of sense, both in LA, both near the beach. But they had won every national championship since the NCAA had been running the event since 2016. So it was a big deal that TCU becomes the first team not from LA to win a national title. But it's equally as important for LMU because they beat USC and UCLA to get to the championship match. Just a gauntlet of a run for the 4 seed in this tournament. LMU, they beat USC in the round of 8. They beat UCLA in the round of 4 to make it to the national title game. Another reason that it was pretty big, TCU has historically underperformed in Gulf Shores. That last year, they were a top seed. They lost in the first round. They've been eliminated in the round of 8. They've reached the round of 4 a couple times and lost. One time as the 1 seed. Just haven't really been able to get it together on the biggest stage. Haven't really been able to get over the hump. And so it was really cool to see them have that success this year that's been eluding them at this tournament for the last couple of seasons. And they had their own little bit of a gauntlet to get through. Obviously, they beat Georgia State in the first round, and then they faced Texas, the 7 seed in this tournament, and they took Texas down in straight sets 3-0, which was just so impressive for the Frogs to beat Texas. And then they beat Cal Poly in the round of 4, 3-1 to get to their first title match. Really cool, really great work by Gutierrez and his squad. He had his daughter there after the game. It was so cool to see. They all ran off into the Gulf to celebrate with the national championship trophy, take a little dive. And it was cool to see the support from TCU's administration too, because Mike Buddy was out there, Chancellor Bashini was out there, President Pullen was out there. A lot of TCU admins made their way to Gulf Shores to watch TCU take down LMU and win a national title. That's important. That's critically important for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is this is a non-revenue sport. This is a sport that loses money year over year, but it still has the complete backing and support of TCU's administration. And I'll never forget, had a chance to talk to Coach Gutierrez a couple of years ago, and the first thing out of his mouth, I've talked to him since then, obviously, but the first thing out of his mouth, one of our first interactions, he could not wait to express gratitude for then TCU Athletic Director Jeremiah NATTY, because he said he recognized fully that this was a non-rev sport, that it wasn't going to make TCU a lot of money, and that in order to operate a beach volleyball program in Fort Worth, Texas, that could compete for national championships, you had to spend money just to send the team places to play good competition. You had to get on a plane and fly to LA. You had to get on a plane and fly to Florida. You had to get on a plane and fly to Hawaii. You had to go to where the beaches are to play beach volleyball. And the investment that TCU has made year over year in a non-revenue sport is indicative of the support that the administration has given across the board to TCU athletics programs over the years. And it's something that hopefully is going to continue under Mike Buddy's leadership and President Pullen's leadership as he transitions to be TCU's next chancellor. So again, really, really cool to see all of these big names in leadership from TCU get out to Gulf Shores and support this program and watch them win their first national championship. It's a big deal. It truly is. And I know that there are a lot of folks out there who think that the main investment should always be football and all of the money should go to football and should always be the conversation about football. But the reality is the biggest investment does go to football, and it will continue to go to football. But in order for TCU to operate an athletics department that has integrity, in order for TCU to operate an athletics department that takes care of all of its student athletes and takes care of, the university, is to operate it in a way that gives everybody an opportunity to participate and compete at the highest level. There's no point in having a program if you're not going to support it in a way that will allow it to win championships. And so it's really cool to see that TCU has continued to do that with beach volleyball. And it's not just beach volleyball, right? I mean, we're coming off of a year last year where men's tennis and rifle both won national championships. Women's rifle has been a dynasty in that sport for the last 10, 15, 20 years now. Men's tennis defending their national championship this year. They've got a super regional coming up against UCF in Fort Worth in the next couple of days. So the support for TCU athletics goes far beyond the big three, and that's how it should be, even in this era of revenue sharing and focusing so much on revenue generation. So couldn't be more pleased for TCU Beach Volleyball that they finally get over the hump, win their first national championship. They end the season on a 12-game winning streak, and they finish with a record of 32-5. Pretty impressive. Really can't say much more about it other than that. Very, very proud of that squad. We're going to have more with folks from that squad, including Coach Gutierrez later this week, as Melissa is coordinating all of that. So keep your eye out in the podcast feed. Keep your ear down to the YouTube channel as well for all of that stuff. But we're going to take a quick break, hear a little bit about the Flying T Club, and then we're going to come back and we're going to talk about baseball's weekend in Arizona. We'll be right back. Hey, Frog fans, Jamie Plunkett here, one of the hosts of Frogs Insider, and I wanted to take a second and talk to you about our presenting sponsor, the Flying T Club. The Flying T Club is an incredible organization. It's TCU's NIL collective, the only NIL collective for TCU, and they support over 130 student athletes wearing purple, loud and proud. They partner these student athletes with organizations in and around the city of Fort Worth, giving back to the Fort Worth community, making our community stronger and better. If you want to learn more about how you can support the Flying T Club's efforts and by proxy support TCU student athletes, all you've got to do is go to flyingtclub.com. That's flyingtclub.com. TCUbeachvolleyball.com and check out the different ways that you can get involved with that organization. I've known the folks over at the FTC for a really long time, and they're incredible people. They're dedicated Horned Frogs. They bleed purple through and through, and they want to get to know you and see how you can partner with them to make the best of TCU student athletes' lives while they're on campus and in Fort Worth. The work they do stretches well beyond TCU's campus as well, partnering with multiple nonprofit organizations. If you have any opportunity to give, I would encourage you to do so over at flyingtclub.com. All right, we are back. This is the Frogs Insider Podcast presented by Flying T Club. Thanks to our sponsors over at Flying T. You just heard about them a little bit more in depth. Hope you can make it over to flyingtclub.com to learn about them. Also, big shout out to Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Again, leave a leave a rating and a review wherever you listen to this podcast. Leave us a comment if you've listened to this point. Just say, "Go Beach Volleyball, go," on this episode, and I'll know that you got to this point in the podcast. But we're going to pivot now from beach volleyball's national championship over to TCU baseball, heading out to Tucson this past weekend, dropping 2 of 3 to the Arizona Wildcats, losing on Friday 6-3, losing on Saturday 5-4, before finally coming through with a win on Sunday afternoon 13-6. There are a couple things about this series that I think drove TCU fans a little bit crazy, and it's understandable why that's the case, because it's not often that you come away from a weekend series having only won a game thinking that there was a legitimate chance to come away with 3 wins. And I feel like that's the case for TCU this weekend. And it wasn't because Arizona's a bad baseball team, because they're not. They're an incredibly good baseball team. The top of their lineup is fantastic with Aaron Walton and Mason White. They were missing Brendan Summerhill for most of this game, except for one moment on Saturday when he pinch hit, and all he did was sac fly in the game-winning run. Great lineup, play good defense. Their pitching was up to the challenge this weekend, and yet TCU had multiple opportunities. They led in every baseball game. They led in all 3 games and couldn't come away with any but one win. And so a couple things that I took away from this weekend. First and foremost is an issue that's been cropping up for the last 3 weekends now. Going back to TCU's last 10 games, which is all the way back to the start of the UCF series, the Frogs have not done a good job of driving runners in. That's costing them baseball games at this point. In the last 10 games, they've stranded 79 runners on base. 79. And yeah, okay, that averages out to about just under 8 per game, right? But when you're losing games 5-4, when you're losing games 6-3, that matters. You've got to be able to get runners in a little bit more. For instance, Friday night's game against Arizona, they lose that baseball game 6-3. They're winning it at one point 3-1. They only stranded 6 runners on base in that game, but they stranded 3 runners at third, right? And you're thinking, man, if you could just convert those 3 stranded runners into runs, you're talking about a 6-6 ball game, but you're really actually talking about probably a 5-1, 6-2 baseball game. And you handle the whole baseball game differently because you got 5 really strong innings from Tommy Lepore. He had to grind it out. He did not have his best stuff. His command wasn't there, but he got you 5 innings and only gave up 2 runs. Had his quality start streak snapped, but he got you through 5 with a lead, and he had only given up 2 runs. Bullpen goes on to give up 4 runs. TCU loses the ball game. The Bats strand a couple runners on base after that. They have a runner doubled off in the 9th inning as Anthony Silva gets caught leaning on a line drive by Isaac Cadena. 1 out turns into a double play in the top of the 9th, and that kind of kills that opportunity. And then, Saturday, similar situation. TCU's up 4-1. Cademan Parker gives you his longest outing of his career. He goes 6 2/3 innings. Throws 89 pitches, has really good stuff, and probably not his best stuff, he'd tell you, but he grinds it out. He gets you through almost 7 innings of baseball, handing you a lead, and or a 3-3 ball game at that point, and you can't come away with the win. TCU loads the bases in the top of the 9th and cannot get a run or two to come away with that win or to force extra innings or anything like that. So two really tough games on Friday and Saturday for TCU, where they got great starting pitching, couldn't quite hold it together with the bullpen, and then the bats just went quiet and couldn't come up with big hits when they needed them. Fortunately, that started to shift a little bit on Sunday. I'll say this, though. It all really started with Mason Brassfield. He got his first start since that debacle of a start against Arizona State where he gave up 6 runs. Worst outing of the year for him. That was back in late March. He's been a stalwart in the bullpen. Really found a groove on Sundays as a long reliever these last couple of weeks, and has clearly been stretched out for another opportunity to start. He got it on Sunday, gave up a run in the first inning. Uh, you know, had to grind, had to settle in. But once he got past that first inning, he really looked comfortable. Threw all the way into the sixth inning, gave TCU 5 1/3 before he kind of ran out of gas. Threw his career high 94 pitches on the day. But I really liked what I saw from Mason Brassfield in his start on Sunday. Thought he did enough. He did plenty to get another opportunity to start next week on Sunday as well. It might be that this weekend, despite the series loss, we finally saw TCU put together what could be a full weekend rotation with Tommy Lepore pitching on Friday, Caden Parker going Saturday, and Mason Brassfield going on Sunday. Of all the times to figure that out and finally put that on paper and get it together, May isn't a bad time to do it, right? This is something that TCU's kind of been scrambling and scuffling to figure out all year is what's the weekend rotation going to look like. I would say that coming out of this weekend, Kirk Saarloos and his coaching staff probably have as much confidence in the starting rotation as they've had all season. So that's a positive coming away from a series loss at Arizona, and not a small one either when you think about hosting Cincinnati this next weekend, going to Utah to close out the regular season, and then you're in tournament. It's tournament time, right? You gotta end on a high note. And I think having a solidified rotation is a really big step to that. You got to drive in runners when you get them on base. Fortunately, TCU started to do that a little bit more on Sunday. They put up 13 runs. They had incredible games at the plate from Colton Griffin and Carson Bowen. Colton Griffin, who started at third on Saturday and Sunday in this series instead of Jack Bell. Sunday, he comes away with 3 doubles. They all drive in runs. He has 4 RBIs on the day. Really swung the bat well. Played good defense too, which is something that he's been up and down with this season. But he provided good defense at third. Had the bat rolling, and then Carson Bowen, 5 RBI day. All 5 RBIs came with 2 outs in the inning. Really impressive day at the plate for Carson Bowen, and that's the kind of thing that TCU needs to start building on, right? We saw the first 2 games of the Arizona series, and for the last few weeks, 2 outs, runner in scoring position, TCU hasn't necessarily been as clutch as they've needed to be. Carson Bowen delivered multiple times on Sunday. Colton Griffin delivered multiple times. Anthony Silva had a big 2-out hit that scored a couple of runs on Sunday. All of that is good news for TCU, and hopefully they can continue that way of hitting in clutch moments as they close out the regular season. So despite the series loss to Arizona, it's not the sky is falling, in my opinion, for TCU. They're still sitting pretty in conference. They've got, a real opportunity to string together some wins here to close out the regular season and solidify their seeding. And I think you learned a lot about the ball club, even in a series loss out in Tucson. So a couple notes about what this means for TCU right now. Well, after the weekend, TCU is 33-15. They're 15-9 in Big 12 play. That's good for a 3-way tie for third in the conference with Kansas and Arizona. Obviously, TCU swept Kansas earlier this year, just lost the series 2-1 to Arizona. Kansas and Arizona don't play. It means we're going to get into some tiebreaker scenarios that we don't frankly have to worry about right at this moment. We can start talking about those after the Cincinnati series to look what needs to happen against Utah for TCU to solidify one of those top 4 seeds. But right now, they're in. They're one of the top 4 seeds. They're in a tie for third. So they just really kind of got to hold serve at this point. Just hold serve and see what everybody else does. Long term, does this mean that TCU is out of the hosting conversation? Not necessarily, but they definitely didn't put themselves in a good position with losing 2 out of 3 in Arizona. It's an uphill battle from here on out. These next 2 weekends are going to be pretty big. If you see them go 5-1 or something like that over the final 2 weekends of the regular season, make a big run in the Big 12 tournament, say get to the championship game. I think that would go a long way to supporting their resume to the point where they would be probably that 15th or 16th host site come selection Sunday. The reality is, though, is that everything is still out ahead of TCU. They can still control their own destiny to an extent. You just got to put together really good weekends these last 2 weekends of the regular season. Next up for TCU, they are hosting a Cincinnati team who has won 6 out of their last 7 and is also coming off of a sweep of the Kansas Jayhawks up in Lawrence. So that's going to be a really interesting series for the Horned Frogs. Looking forward to what lies in store for TCU baseball the last couple weekends of the regular season. One final note before we get out of here. Saw another event on Sunday that was a little bit interesting, and that's Kirk Saarloos got thrown out of the game. He got ejected on Sunday in the 5th inning. He had a little bit of a incensed moment in the bottom of the 5th because of a check swing that did not go TCU's way. He thought that the Arizona batter went around, said something about it, got tossed out of the game, and then went and made a beeline straight for the third base umpire. His name's Mike Morris. He and Kirk Saarloos have had beef in the past. They've had some run-ins in the past. He's been tossed by Mike Morris before, and he let Mike know what he was thinking. He got his money's worth before he got tossed. TCU went on to win the baseball game. Obviously, it served as a little bit of an inspiration, but that's the second Sunday in a row that Saarloos has been kicked out of a ball game. Getting back to his roots a little bit. He was a lot more fiery towards umpires early on in his head coaching career, especially in 2022, 23. He's tried to tone it down a lot over the last couple of seasons and take it easier and keep that blood pressure low. But I think that, so often in sports, teams take on the attitude of their head coach. And I think seeing a little bit more fire from Kirk Saarloos is a good thing. Not necessarily that he keeps getting thrown out these last 2 Sundays, but I think that TCU responded in a fiery way when they saw their head coach get fired up. And so maybe it is a good thing that Kirk Saarloos is getting back to his fired up roots a little bit. TCU may start playing a little bit more inspired baseball the rest of the way down the stretch. But we'll just have to wait and see when Cincinnati comes to town next Friday. That's going to do it for this episode of Frogs Insider. I will be back later this week. Melissa will be back later this week as well. But until we talk to you again, go Frogs.